Hey, welcome back to ZK MasterTech. Today we have an oil pan to replace on a 9630, and in fact this is the tractor that I did the axle bearing video on. One thing in the video that I didn't show was this actually had an oil leak on the bottom of the oil pan, and I found it had a crack around the bottom drain plug in the oil pan. And what I did was I drained all the oil down, got it to where there wasn't any oil sitting on top of that crack, and then I took high temperature JB weld and put it around the plug where the crack was, just to get this tractor back up and running again, because the customer needed to finish the year and do some tillage in the field with it. So it actually held up, it didn't leak anymore. But this engine is actually a newer reman engine and it's still under warranty. So the customer wanted to go ahead and get their work done with the tractor, and then they wanted to bring it back, and then we're going to replace the oil pan on this machine. The first step, according to John Deere, for doing the oil pan on this machine is to remove engine. Nope, we're not doing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen the axle mount bolts as far as we can to raise the engine up far enough so we can get the oil pan out and clear the axle and the oil pump on the bottom side of the engine. And I'll bring you in and show you why we're going to do that. Let's check it out. All right, this is a 13.5 liter tier 3 Deere engine here, and we got to remove this oil pan right here. But as you can see how close it is to the front axle housing. So if you take this pan down, it hits that axle before you can clear the oil pump here in the back. So we got to drop this axle down in order to get this pan out. And what I'm going to do is, we got these mount bolts here. We're going to take these bolts all the way out to where they're just barely threaded in the axle on both sides. And then we're going to take these air jacks here and we're going to place it on the frame. And then we're going to lift this frame up off this axle as far as we can to get more clearance right here. So then we can get the oil pan out without having to remove this engine. So we're going to be saving a ton amount of time to get this oil pan replaced rather than pulling this whole engine out, which requires a bunch of work, and I don't really want to have to do that. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you guys how it's done. Okay, so here's the bottom view of the oil pan here. The first thing we're going to do is, well, we already dropped the oil here. That's my stellar JB weld job right there that fixed the problem. But we're going to take this pipe off here and this hydraulic filter here. But first we got to drain the hydraulic reservoir, which we're going to take that plug out right there and drain it. Okay. What size is this drain plug? 16-inch Nipex wrench pliers. They work like a champ. We gotta take the cap off the reservoir, get some more flow. Just gonna try out my new strap wrench. This is a gear wrench, strap wrench. Yep. I actually had a Blue Point one, and it broke, and it actually subs to the gear inch one, according to the Snap-on guy. That. Now we can get this pipe off. Now we can use those same Nipex wrench pliers to get this line off. Just get a little wider. What I like about these, you got a bunch of lines or something to take off, instead of getting out a whole bunch of wrenches, you can just use these. So here we got a 41mm Tecton 4-way angle wrench. You can get these straight from Tecton off their website, and they're made in the USA. And they're like a third of the price of Snap-on. 41 fits like a glove. That fitting was trying to turn on me.
Those wrenches are super handy.
She goes. She came off with a bang. So here's our new oil pan, and I'm just going to go ahead and put some coats of paint on this thing, so when we're ready to replace it, she's dry and ready to go. And that green paint's liquid gold and makes this worth way more. There she is, all John Deere green now. Okay, so while our paint is drying on our oil pan, we can go ahead and take out all the bolts except for one in the middle. And I'm going to use a Milwaukee 90-degree impact. Alright, so I got all the bolts off of both sides except for one on each side, kind of hold it in place. And when we're ready, we'll just take those two out. But I got to get this black shield out. But look where that bolt is located. That's gonna be fun. So I might have to take the top shield off as well in order to get that one out, but I might be able to just unbolt it and move it out of the way, because this shield is actually over two of the back bolts, so you can't even get a socket on it unless you take that shield off. So I'm gonna work on getting that out of the way. All right, so we got the shields unbolted. I was able to get the top one kind of up and wedged into place, but the problem is I need to get the bottom half of the shield out, and come to find out that thing's busted and bent, and it only goes down so far and hits the top of the axle, so I can't get it out yet. But I had to undo some electrical here and some brackets to even get my hand in there to where I could get something on the nut to hold it, because it was spinning. So we're gonna go ahead and jack up this frame off of these, remove these axle bolts and raise it up, and then hopefully we'll have enough room to squeak that shield out of there. All right, if you remember from my axle video, I actually torqued these with a 1-inch torque wrench to 775 foot-pounds. We're going to use the 1/2-inch high torque Milwaukee. All right, we got all the bolts broken loose, and I threaded them in where they were, in a few turns. So I'm kind of thinking that's not going to be enough room going up to clear the oil pan, but if I got to get some longer bolts, I'll just get some longer bolts, but we're going to give this a whirl for now. got some pins in that jacks. Okay, there we go. Got her lifted up as far as I'm comfortable with those bolts. We'll see if we can get that shield out now. So I was able to get the axle raised about that much. But see, this shield, this lip was covering the back bolt, so I had to get it dropped down out of the way. You can see where that shield's busted right there, but even with the frame lifted up, I still can't get that shield all the way out of there. But I gotta get these bolts off that are back here. So hopefully I can get on them now and get those broke loose. So I got the rear bolts out, and boy was that a pain to get in there and get those bolts out, and plus they were really tight. So now we're going to take the remaining 2 bolts off each side, and then we'll smack this pan with a dead blow and try to get it loose, and then hopefully we've got enough room to get this thing out. All right, so we took the bolts loose, and the pan seam already separated, didn't even have to tap it. So I'm gonna get it underneath there and hold that up while Justin takes the bolts out and drop this pan down.
Out. Okay.
Hose. What am I catching on?
The coolant hose. Kind of goes slack a little bit, and I'll get it past it. Maybe. You gotta go that towards the tractor, back towards the tractor, down.
Move that hose again. It's caught on the fill neck.
Shit. There you go. Down and back. Almost got it.
Let it go.
Got it. Jeez.
Here, take it. I win. There you go. There's the bottom side of the engine. And that's that oil pickup tube that I was trying to clear. And it sits in a baffle. And so I needed to drop that pan low enough to where I could clear that pickup tube out of the baffle. You can see here. See this baffle right here? So that pickup tube was stuck down in there, but you can't just go through this little gap, so you got to drop it down low enough to where you can clear it up here. So dropping that axle down while raising the frame off of it gave me just enough room where I could get this pan low enough to sneak it out. This high temperature JB weld that goes on, it's like a real thick putty. It's almost like a tarry Play-Doh. It's not kind of liquidy. Like, you don't mix like 2 liquids together. It actually comes in like a tube, and you break off a piece, and then there's 2 adhesives in there, a hardener and an adhesive, and you just start smashing in your hands and rubbing it together, and eventually it turns one color, and then you just lay it on there real thick like a hard putty, and then in 8 hours you can drill and tap that stuff, and it's temperature rated up to 500 degrees. So this actually worked and got the job done where it didn't leak, so the customer could finish what he was doing. So went ahead and put a thin film of aviation gasket sealer. I like to use that, and I put that on there, and then I let it get tacky, and then allow me to stick that oil pan gasket on and adhere to that pan so it doesn't move while we're trying to install it onto the engine. And it'll also help see all the little maybe imperfections in the pan. I noticed this one, you know, was new, but it had some scratches here and there on it, so I wanted to make sure that it was sealed correctly. All right, so we got a thin layer of silicone across the back where the housing for the rear crankshaft seal goes. There's some gaps that you gotta seal, and then also on the front as well. So we've got that silicone in place, and we're ready to put this pan up in there. And I'll put a couple dowels in place to help us line it up. And I'll get it put up in there, and then Justin will start a couple bolts, and then I'll get out from under it, and we'll put the rest of the bolts in and torque it.
Use this on up here. Very carefully. Move that hose. Guide me. Figuring that down. Check the other side. You in there? Yeah, you're in there. Hang on a second. Put bolts in it.
Okay, we got the oil pan in, and we got all the bolts in and snugged. Now we're gonna go through and torque all these bolts. Now it's got a funky torque specification and sequence, but basically we're gonna tighten bolts 1 through 22 in the sequence to 133 inch-pounds, and then bolts 21 through 30, is that what it says? 23 through 30, we're going to tighten those to 221 inch-pounds. And then we're going to go through and we got to torque turn all these bolts 90 degrees. So these bolts are one-time use bolts. You're supposed to remove and discard them, install new bolts, and then you torque them to spec, and then torque them an additional 90 degrees to add that extra clamping force. All right, we got the torque wrench set to 133 inch-pounds. Well, let's get this party started. Okay, so we got all the bolts torqued, and let me tell you, you haven't lived until you've torque turned those bolts, especially those back ones that are really hard to get to. And I couldn't have done it easily without this torque wrench right here. This does torque angle, and it senses whenever there's torque on the head, and then it starts counting degrees of rotation. So when I was in that hole, I was able to ratchet this back and forth, and I can't see anything, and you're basically just torquing until it clicks, or beeps and vibrates, I should say. This one does. And then you know where you're at, and then you move the next one, you can ratchet and then torque it again, and then you know you're at 90 degrees, and you can't see those back bolts. So if you had to do it the hard way, you'd have to like put a mark on the bolt and get up there and torque it a few times, and then you have to get a mirror and look up in there and see if you actually turned it 90 degrees. With this, you can just ratchet until it hits the 90 degrees, and then it beeps and vibrates, and then you know you're done. So even though these torque wrenches are, I think this one's $534 for a 3/8 torque wrench, it's worth its weight in gold, because a lot of the times we are torque turning bolts on this newer equipment, and these are an absolute must. All right, so we got that lower shield fixed and got the both top and bottom shields into place. We got the electrical reinstalled on the left-hand side. Now all we got left is we got that pipe down here, we got that pipe back in. We're gonna tighten that up, and then we're gonna put a new hydraulic filter on it. I don't need to change this oil filter because it's literally brand new. It has not had that many hours ran on it. So we got to fill the hydraulic reservoir because we had that drained. And then we also got to lower the frame back down on the axle and torque those bolts. Then we'll fill the engine full of oil and start this rig up. We're using the jack so I can get the pins out. Going down. That. There it is. Now I'm going to slam the other side with a 1/2 inch impact, and then I'm going to have to get a long extension to get on those bolts in a 1-inch torque wrench so we can torque that to 775 foot-pounds. All right, so we got the hydraulic reservoir full, got everything buttoned up here. Now we're going to fill this thing full of oil, and this thing holds 15.8 gallons of oil. So we got a bulk oil tank right here, and we'll just fill straight out of it into here. So you can't go full trigger with this fill neck or it just overflows. So you got to open the valve on here just barely, and I've got a professional flow regulating kit calibrated to the perfect amount here. Don't laugh, it works. Look at that, couldn't be more on the money. Click, it's torque. I tried to get that big torque wrench and extension in there, but it was just too wonky clear up here on the tire, and I couldn't hit the torque. So we're just gonna slam her down with a 1-inch impact and call it a day. Click. Go on there. Click. Did you hear it click off?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. 775.
Yep.
All right, it's time to fire this bad boy up. right, so that's gonna do it on this rig here. All we got left is to put the side shields on, and then I'll take it outside and drive it around a little bit and just make sure we don't have any leaks. I rechecked the oil level's good, so we're good there. And stick around, I've been talking a lot about the Sloan's apprenticeship program, and I'm gonna interview our very own apprentice here. He works under me, his name's Justin Sapp. And so you guys can see what he thinks about the apprenticeship program, and he can tell you a little bit more about it. So let's check that out. All right, you guys might recognize this guy. You might have seen him in a couple of my videos, but this is Justin Sapp, and he is a new apprentice here at Sloan Implement in Atwood, Illinois. And go ahead and tell us about the apprenticeship program.
So when you start, you get attached to a master. Mine in this case is MasterTech. It lasts for 1 year. It's hands-on and school on a laptop. Plus you do core classes over in our training center here at the shop, so no travel. It's paid training. You go in steps, and the further you go, the more intense it gets. But it is a great program. They don't just throw you to the wolves. I didn't have any previous experience on machinery like this that we work on daily. Mine was more automotive. And
you spent time in the military too.
I did. Quite a few years working on Humvees and things like that, but this is a whole nother world. This is the special forces of mechanicry. So you start out very simple. It's kind of an acclimation week at the beginning. You're learning the ins and outs of what we do on a daily basis from the time you get here till the time you leave. Then it gets more intense, but you always have somebody there to answer questions and to teach. It's a great program. They provide you with, you sign a contract for 2 years. They provide you with about $1,500 worth of tools.
Which you get John Deere tools, which are pretty nice.
Which are extremely nice. The boxes right there. It's pretty much everything you need except specialty tools and impact tools. So you kind of got to get those on your own, but to help you out. And the tools are great. You get a laptop, and you get to go to school on the laptop, plus you get face-to-face school time. They're called core classes. The laptop sessions, they don't interrupt you. When it's study time, it's study time. And then you get hands-on training with guys like Zeth. And there's a couple other guys here that could do the same thing. And you're never left out just kind of wanting to know what's going on. They always keep you in the loop. And like I said, it goes for a year. And when that year is over, you become a tech. Granted, you're not a master tech yet, but that's going to take some time. But you have a general idea of how to do a lot of everything, from our smaller tractors to the giant combines you see in the videos. And they work with you, and you take your time. And I mean, it's not something you have to jump in and be ready to go in 3 months. They give you a solid year to get comfortable and provide you with pretty much everything you need. You have to buy some of your own tools, but that's to be expected. Other than that, it is a spectacular program. And like I said, I didn't have much experience, and I'm super stoked to be here.
What do you think for working in Sloan Implement in general? How do you like that?
They brought me in and made me feel like I belonged. Like I said, didn't have much experience in this type of environment other than when I was in the military. Otherwise, kind of a shade tree mechanic. Definitely not on ag stuff like this. And at Sloan's, I met the boss. I mean, the owner of the company within the first week and a half of working here, and shook my hand, knew my name. Zeth was great from day one. Everybody here kind of takes it upon themselves to help you whenever possible. So there's not a time that you're left alone just going, how do I do this? So it's a great environment.
What kind of hours do we work here?
You come in at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the vast majority of the time you leave at 5, but there's times when you're out in the field, especially during harvest and planting season. when you don't get back until a little later. But I mean, you're not pulling anything crazy. I mean, we work 6 days a week during harvest and planting, but the rest of the year it's alternating Saturdays. So I mean, you get overtime, which is nice. And then you get 30 minutes for lunch every day and 2 15-minute breaks. It's pretty hard to beat. They provide you uniforms so you don't mess up your clothes. They give you $100 towards boots.
Or any safety equipment.
Yeah, that's true. Any safety equipment, glasses.
You get $100 a year.
Yeah. And you can email anybody and they'll contact you right back. So, I mean, if you need to talk to somebody in corporate, which is an assumption, you flick an email and they're either going to call you or email you right back. It's an extremely personable place. In 20 years of working, and before this, I was, other than the Army, I was in management in a different field. And I'm not in management here by choice, and it has been a terrific experience. I have not been a boss, not been a boss for 20 years. This is the best experience I've had.
So who would you recommend this for? Who would you recommend the apprenticeship program for? Like, who would it be geared towards?
I would say, I mean, I'm a little older than probably who they're shooting for, but younger guys that are curious about turning a wrench, guys coming out of high school, and I mean, it's paid training. Maybe somebody who doesn't quite know what they want to do, give it a shot. It's you really can't go wrong. If it's not something that you're comfortable with, after a while they'll find something else that you might be more comfortable with. If you don't like working on the combines, you can go work on tractors or work on lawn and garden, or even in the parts department and Sloan's Express. There's a whole bunch of different ways to apprentice. I would definitely say it's for people who are driven.
Yeah, this is not just a job for a paycheck. This is someone that does this career because that's what they love to do, and they have a passion for it.
Right, you have to have a want for this job. But when you get here, you think, I might like it, I might not. You're gonna like it. I have yet to find something that we do that I don't dig.
And we have positions available for technicians and apprentices at almost every location we have. And there's 22 locations between Illinois and Wisconsin.
Constantly hiring.
So we need more technicians like Justin Sapp here. If you guys would like to apply for the apprenticeship program, I'll put a link in the bottom of this video that'll take you to the landing page where you can fill out some contact information to where we can get a hold of you. But I appreciate you jumping on and joining the team this summer. You've been an asset to Sloan Implement, and I just really appreciate everything you've done to help me out.
And I thank you. This is, like I said, the best experience and the best teacher I've ever had. So if you watch the videos, when I say he knows his stuff, man, does he know his stuff.